Hey, I'm Vin, and this is Give It Space. If you've ever experienced a little voice in your head that criticizes your choices, picks apart your looks, talks down to you, and just generally makes you feel bad about yourself, then you've come to the right podcast, and this is the episode for you. For the next few minutes, we're going to sit with one feeling, idea, social norm, identity, and I have a feeling you can probably already guess what we're going to be talking about today. Together, we'll explore where this thing comes from, why it lingers, and give it room to breathe without trying to fix it. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's give it some space. Today's episode is about the way that we talk to ourselves because Lord knows who taught you to talk like that. I know it wasn't you. Maybe it was your parents. Maybe it was your grandparents. Maybe it was your aunt and uncle. Maybe you don't have parents and you grew up in a foster system and you just learned it from your friends. I don't know. Somebody taught you how to talk to yourself. And whether it's subconscious or consciously, it plays a major role in how your life continues to develop and how you live your life. I like to call this thing my inner critic. There's an official name for it. That can be your inner critic. That could be self-talk. But I like to think of it as like my alter ego or this just shadow version of myself that is evil and just hates me and does not want to see me succeed. That's who I like to think of it as. So, knowing that, we're going to find out together whether or not these voices in our heads are actually evil, what they are, where they come from, and how we can live with it, because I don't know if there's a way to get rid of that inner critic. So we're just going to have to learn how to live alongside it. But like I said, there's many different names for it. Your evil persona, your twin from the womb, your, I don't know, Thanos, but in your head. I don't know. No matter what the name is, it's hard to fully understand where it comes from or even what exactly your inner critic is or what negative self-talk is. We have to understand where it comes from, where it begins, what are its origins, what's the plot. The inner critic or negative self-talk begins in early adolescence, even infanthood. So before you can form a thought, this has formed. When we're kids, we rely on our parents for literally everything. Food, shelter, clothes, love, appreciation, pride, encouragement, protection, and so on and so forth, and forever and ever. We view them as our lifelines because they are. So in order to secure our attachment to them, we will do whatever it takes to survive, even if that means turning on ourselves. Now, we are all imperfect people, and our parents are imperfect parents, and everybody's imperfect. But whether they intended to or not, sometimes they weren't able to meet our needs. And I'm not talking about like small needs, like, oh, I need a new pair of socks. Like, no, I'm talking about like fulfillment, like emotional, learning, behavioral needs. And that's when we, in turn, were met with an impossible decision when our needs weren't met. Either we keep asking our parents knowing our needs aren't being met, or we accept that our needs will never be met, aka hopelessness, or we turn on ourselves and say that our needs are bad and needing them is bad, and we are innately bad for needing certain things. Isn't that fucked up? What do you mean? I thought that I was a bad child for wanting my parents to say that they were proud of me for getting an A. Hello? Obviously, we're young and we're gullible, and we are unable to understand the bigger picture as to why our parents are not meeting our needs. We don't apply the blame to them, rather we place the blame on ourselves. And it only gets worse as we grow up. I mean, fucking high school, am I right? Like, everything's worse in high school. Add in societal pressures, bullies, teenage angst, and everything on top of needs not being met at home, and you're left with a kid still trying to earn their parents' love, earn their pride, their acceptance, protection, or whatever by putting themselves down first. We grow up and we want to start coming into our own. We experiment. We figure out what our niche is, what our interests are, who our friends are, what our style is like, experimenting with our looks, our hobbies, But we still rely on our parents to be that safe landing place, to welcome us with open arms as soon as we figured out who we are and who we want to be and what aligns with us. And we will do anything to not jeopardize that lifelong bond with them. But if we go out into the world as our authentic selves after experimenting and are met by judgment and criticism or indifference, denial, contempt from our parents rather than the warm, loving arms we're expecting, we feel that it's safer to blame ourselves for all of the confusion and the pain. So instead of valuing ourselves and taking pride in our authenticity, we learn to do these little self-checks, adapted from the responses we got from our parents growing up. It gets to a point where the voice in your head mimics that of authority, so you feel helpless to listen. And this is where it gets tricky. That voice in your head is not your parents' voice. It's all you, unfortunately. Sorry to break it to you, but you learned to talk to yourself like that from yourself. Obviously, it was impacted by outside factors. It might sound like your parents, but it's been altered by your childhood experiences. Research from Psychology Today suggests that people with harsh self-critical tendencies encountered frequent judgments, ridicule, and a scarcity of positive regard during their childhoods. These experiences extend to relationships with parents, teachers, siblings, and peers. Additionally, societal expectations amplify and mold these self-critical tendencies, forming a complex interplay of influences. However, most emphasis is placed on parental influence. Children raised in families with critical, controlling, demanding, abusive, or indifferent parents often tend to develop a harsher inner critic. Essentially, the inner critic acts as an introjected, critical parental figure. Now, this is where I start to get confused. I consider my critic to be severe. Like I said, it is literally this mutated, angry, evil, villainous version of myself that hates me, that does nothing all day but tell me how shitty of a person I am, how ugly I am, how undeserving I am of love and empathy and acceptance. He is always hounding on me for something. At least 10 to 20 negative thoughts in my head that I'm aware of per day that I can listen to and be like, oh, that's a negative thought. Oh, that's my inner critic. But it's always subconscious for the most part. And then when I recognize it, then it becomes conscious. My parents were not abusive. They weren't overly controlling, overly demanding, not outwardly critical. I mean, sometimes they could be a little passive aggressive, but whose parents aren't? And they definitely weren't indifferent towards me, at least not that I remember. So how is it that my inner critic is so severe and so controlling when my environment growing up was not what they, or Psychology Today is suggesting, of intense? Because for the most part, I remember having a very happy childhood. I mean, I was the hardest on myself. So take out the parents. I think my inner critic obviously is my voice, but more than that, it's all of the bad things that I thought about myself growing up because I was so hard on myself when my parents weren't. It's almost like if my parents didn't scold me for something they didn't need to, I was already scolding myself. Maybe my biggest need was recognition. Not like attention, but pride. Because I always did everything I could for attention. Not like the bad stuff, not like drugs and alcohol and whatever. But I was first chair cellist in orchestra. I played a bunch of sports. I was AB average in school. I got honor roll. I dressed nicely and always looked put together. I had a good group of friends that were nice and my parents knew their parents. I started modeling in high school, etc., etc. And my parents were always there to support me. Like, that's the thing. They never missed a game. They never missed a concert. They were there at my modeling jobs. They were there at every award ceremony, every photo shoot, and yet still I'm left with this crazy inner voice that despises everything about me and cannot say one positive thing. I think some of it comes from my exploration of my sexuality in high school, my interest in anime and cosplaying, and the modeling thing. Those were not well received by the majority of those in my life at the time. No one understood it or cared to understand for a while, and it was a lot of judgment. And I felt isolated despite living comfortably as myself or learning about the authenticity that I wanted to share with the world in regards to how I was being portrayed and observed. So now, those three things seem to be where my inner critic holds the most power. my gender and sexuality, how I present myself, relationships, when it comes to like my romantic life and future partners and who I'm interested in, my queerness, how I express it, my looks, and whether or not I believe I'm attractive, because the modeling was not well received. Nobody thought that I should do it. Nobody thought that I could do it. When I did start doing it, I had a lot of hype from fake people that only wanted to know me because of the label. And in the industry, it was all, oh, you're going places, you're going to do awesome stuff. And then, you gain 10 pounds and they forget you exist. But a lot of people believed that that was either going to make me super egotistical or that it was going to make me super insecure. And, coming out of that, now you think, if I'm not a model, then I'm nothing. If I'm not model status, then I'm not attractive. If I can't just go to a photo shoot, or if I'm not being complimented all the time, then I have no worth. And then the last one is my hobbies and my interests not being ordinary enough to turn into careers. Growing up, I was always told I was super creative. I know that. That is not the only thing I should ever be complimented on, though. I was smart. I am smart. Maybe not book smart. I'm street smart. I'm very emotionally intelligent. I'm very aware. I have great intuition. It's not just the creativity. But then when I started finding these outlets for my creativity that were not drawing or painting or ceramics or writing, and it's instead turned into cosplaying, doing anime skits online when everybody else was doing TikTok dances, I was cosplaying, and I gained a pretty good following doing that. So if you're one of my followers from Anime TikTok of 2021, special mention, love you, I'm still your friend, I still want to talk to you. But anyways, the people in my life at that time that didn't understand that side of me judged me. And in turn, my inner critic now uses that against me and is like, well, you'll never be anything. You can't turn cosplaying into a career. You can't turn anime content into a career. Like, you're a has-been wannabe. Like, you're never going to achieve the community and the fame that you did in 2021 doing anime content ever again. And therefore, it was just a waste of time. Isn't that just fun? I love that. I love that little voice in my head that makes me feel like a shitty human being all the time. Yeah, so we as humans, our psyches are organized around avoiding pain. I promise this has something to do with it. And our inner critics believe that they are sheltering us from more pain by reminding us of past hurts and whispering exaggerated, catastrophizing thoughts and statements that force us to withdraw from what it perceives as a dangerous situation. Sometimes it feels as though the inner critic acts as a gossip spreader. I'm so unaware of what it's feeding my mind all the time that it's impossible to address. You have this voice in your head that's just talking shit about you all the time, and you're so sick of hearing it that you tune it out, but then when you tune it out, it's still talking shit about you. And then it goes and tells your heart all this shit, and then it goes and tells your white blood cells all this shit about you, and then it goes and tells your, I don't know, your fucking hair follicles all of this shit and drama about you. And you're tuning it out, so you're not aware, but then all of a sudden your whole body hates you, and then you tune back into these thoughts, and it's like, well, what the fuck did I miss? All of a sudden, I'm a fucking alien that, deserves to die. And that's how my body perceives me, and so then that's what I start to believe. But when I hear people say, oh, just be kinder to yourself, or even when given praise or affirmation or compliments, I automatically shut it down, thinking that I'm being lied to or that I'm not worthy of their words. But my inner voice talks so often, sometimes I accidentally disassociate, and then I'm just listening to all of the mean things that my body and my mind is saying about me, and subconsciously absorbing those statements as if they were fact. So while all of that gossiping is happening, I'm disassociating. But then sometimes I disassociate so hard that I lock back into my brain, and then I'm aware of the words and the thoughts being whispered in my ear about me that are shitty. And then somebody just says, oh, well, just be kinder to yourself. Oh, but you're so brave. You're so great. Just look in the mirror and say that you're kind and you're brave and you're smart and you're funny and you're pretty or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's kind of hard to do when the entirety of my brain is telling me to shut the fuck up and that I'm stupid and that I'll never be anything. No, that's not how it works. Sorry. So it all basically goes back to childhood wounds. If we as children were never praised for doing the dishes or cleaning up our rooms without being told to do so, then we grow up to believe that not doing those things means that we're lazy. We're lazy slobs who can't take care of ourselves. We can recognize that calling ourselves lazy slobs may have helped us stay in our parents' good graces as we were kids because we were taking the blame before they could blame us for it, saying that our need to be validated and to have our parents understand that we did the dishes without having to be asked, and that's a good thing, and that's rewarding good behavior. But then they don't reward us with that good behavior. We automatically are like, well, we're bad for thinking that we need validation for and praise for doing the dishes. So instead of letting my parents tell me that I'm bad, I'm just going to tell myself that I'm bad and lazy and a slob. And it's not okay, but we learn to do that growing up because, like I said, our parents are our lifelines. So we believe that that's what we have to do in order to continue to survive. But then as we grow up and we're adults, speaking to ourselves that way is very damaging because it erodes our sense of trust in ourselves. Most of us wouldn't trust someone who called us a lazy slob all the time after not doing the dishes once. So if we're doing that to ourselves, we're not going to trust ourselves either because we're not in that lifeline safety situation anymore where we're relying on our parents. Now, if we do the dishes without being told to do so, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't be calling ourselves lazy slobs for it. We have to unlearn that bad behavior and that negative self-talk in order to continue to live. And like, I live with my sister now. If my sister were to be like, hey, I noticed that you did the dishes and put them away. I really appreciate you doing that. Like, you didn't have to do that, but you took your time out of your day to do that, and I really appreciate it, and I want to return the favor to you. That's never been said to me before. It's always been met with like passive aggressive, oh, you didn't do the dishes, or oh, of course you only do the dishes when I don't tell you to do them, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So then I'm going to start to think that action is going to be met with either indifference or negativity. So then before that interaction can happen, I just tell myself that I'm bad for needing praise. So that's something that I have to unlearn for sure. It's also completely self-defeating. Contrary to popular belief, we are much less likely to be motivated to do better when we're hard on ourselves. Research tells us that we're much more likely to feel motivated to do better when we're kind and compassionate to ourselves. It reminds me of the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. Why am I allowed to look in the mirror and listen to my inner critic tell me that I'm ugly, unlovable, useless, talentless, etc., when I would never in a million bajillion years say that to another human being? Ever. This is where my research kind of led me to a crossroads, because your inner critic is different from negative self-talk. One has to follow the other. Your inner critic is basically the prerequisite for negative self-talk. So your inner critic tells you that you're ugly, unlovable, useless, talentless, whatever, and it feeds your psyche with its bullshit. But it's not the one actually saying it. It's the one thinking those thoughts. The self-talk and negative self-talk is what actually is turning that thought into a language that you can understand, and it uses it to get to you. So they're kind of like partners in crime. Your inner critic and negative self-talk, they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Dynamic duo. By listening to my inner critic tell me that I'm ugly all the time, I might just start to believe it. And when I believe it, it'll be 10 times harder for me to build that trust with myself again when I look in the mirror and trying to restore my confidence back. Because now I've heard, you're an ugly piece of shit, you're not attractive, you can't be loved, every time I look in the mirror. So now that I'm aware that that's what happens, if I go look in the mirror right now, it's going to be that much harder to trust myself when I say, no, you are attractive, you are lovable, you are kind and caring and deserving of whatever it is I think I'm deserving of. Because now I just think I'm a liar. Now I think that I'm making it up because the inside voice has been telling me for 22 years of my life that that's not true. So I don't even know what's true or not anymore. So if you tell yourself you deserve your shitty job, that you could never make more than $20 an hour, that you're not attractive enough to talk to that person at the bar, or any of these other circumstances, then that's going to become your reality. But turning off the critic is impossible. And muting it only works when you're otherwise occupied with other tasks. But like I've said before, when you do tune back into the inner critic, it just gets worse. So for now, let's try replacing some of our negative self-talk with positive ones via the segment of this episode where we give it all some space. If you haven't done this before, it's an exercise I like to do in each episode to kind of just give us pause from whatever our subject is. And as I've said before, I'm not a professional, not a therapist, not a life coach, or motivational speaker, so take that with a grain of salt. This exercise, we acknowledge the feeling, emotion, idea, moment, whatever, aka in this moment, inner critics, without trying to problem solve. So if you'd like to join me, you can start by taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you're in a safe place, try closing your eyes, becoming less aware of your physical body and more aware of what's happening in your mind. Regardless of where our inner critic comes from, what needs are left unmet, what lies we believe just because it's said in our head, we are all imperfect humans, deserving of love, support, kindness, and recognition. Think back to the happiest childhood version of yourself. How would they encourage you in this moment? What would they say about how much you've grown, how mature you are, how official you are in your big kid job, how your partner or spouse is exactly what they pictured them to be, how your style is cool as fuck, how your friends still make you laugh, cry, and so on. Little you didn't care if you didn't fold your clothes, if you tripped up during a presentation, if you didn't meet your daily protein goal. When I start to hear my inner critic get louder, when I feel doubtful or discouraged, scared or anxious, I'm going to think of 5-year-old me and imagine what he would say to lift me up and encourage me to keep going in that moment. Because in the end, his opinion is the only one I care about. When I put my head on my pillow each night, I don't care what anyone but the purest, happiest, most loving and creative version of me has to say. Because he's not my inner critic. He's the opposite of my inner critic. And with that, you can meet me back in this present moment. It's hard to recognize your inner critic and catch the negative self-talk as it's happening. And it's even harder to make a conscious effort to change your outlook. Sometimes it feels easier to just believe the voice in your head. I mean, it is you, after all. But it's important to know that it's a skewed version of the most abandoned, hopeless, vulnerable part of yourself, mixed with the influence of your parents talking to you. So while you might not be able to tune it out or completely stop the voice in your head, just understanding how it is a hurting version of yourself, trying to protect what it deems as survival, can be enough to overcome it. But there's other ways to combat negative self-talk, and you can find it on Psychology Today in an article titled, How You Talk to Yourself Matters, since I'm running out of time and don't want to explain all of the ways that you can go around it. But it is pretty informative, so definitely go look at that. Last thing I'll say, remember to upload your stories to Rinse and Replay in the Google form linked in the show notes. Because you know that one time that you were in the shower and you were remembering an argument from high school and you thought of the perfect fucking comeback and then realized that that was 8 years ago and it's not relevant anymore? Yeah, well, we want to hear about it. That is the exact kind of story that I want to read out loud on Rinse and Replay. So you can submit anonymously or use made-up names because selected stories will be read on the podcast with me, and I'm just going to tell you, my sister, she's the podcast guest. Yeah. She's really cool, and she listens to Reddit stories a lot, as do I, so we would be really good at it, and we want to hear your stories and talk about them on a live video on YouTube, because it'll be really fun, and we have funny reactions and commentary, and it's not to make fun of anybody. It's not to give advice or say who's right or wrong in the situation. It's to help you get these memories off your chest so they don't weigh on you so much. So you're not still thinking about that situation 8+ years later with nothing to do and thinking that you were in the wrong or whatever. Share your story and let's talk about it. And with that, thank you so much for listening. I'm so grateful that you are here. This is Give It Space, your virtual room to slow down, breathe, and just be for a moment. If you want to support this podcast and me, you can get updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes on Instagram at GiveItSpacePod, which has a link in the bio where you'll find my TikTok and my Patreon also listed. I'm always happy to hear your feedback or thoughts for future topics, so feel free to DM me on Instagram, or you can shoot me an email at giveitspacepod@gmail.com. I'm your host, Ben, and I will see you next time. stupid fucking dinosaur. Add in societal pressure. Well, societal to romance. Romance? Oh my god, did you hear that? That's crazy. Because I don't trust myself. Sorry. I had an itch. Contrary to popular belief? Lick a chow. Yeah. I've been holding this iPad the whole time, and I've been holding the microphone the whole time. Yeah, I should go now. My Wi-Fi router can't handle this many devices plugged in at one time. Oh my god, if I hear one more fucking car come up this driveway, I hope to whatever gods are in the sky above me that there are not too many disruptions in this podcast that I have to go back and edit out, because that would be the bane of my fucking existence. Also, you can't see it, but I swear I do have decorations in my room. Like, I don't know why, but every time I have the phone propped up, you can't see the personality of my room. And it's really depressing because, like, I have a poster right above me that you can't see. And I have another painting that I made above me that you can't see. And I have posters of anime stuff that you can't see. And I have all my books. And I have all of my nice fancy plants. And all that shit you can't fucking see. And my sister's cat, his name is Milo. If he ever makes an appearance, he's a black cat. He's super cool, super cute. You probably won't see him because he gets freaked out when I'm newly freaked out when I'm doing this. But yeah, he might appear sometimes. So anyways, I gotta go. Bye.